Right, next up, we've got a really exciting panel that's going to build on what you've just heard from Yemi. My colleague John Moulding, who's carrying a chair towards me, mildly terrifyingly, is going to host, so I will let him introduce the panel. But we are talking about, will AI agents redefine business models?
Okay, all right.
Middle.
Okay.
I go on
You
the
don't
end.
want to be in the middle?
No.
I'll go in the middle.
Thanks.
Right, so as James said, we're talking about mainly agentic AI, but not everything we talk about on this panel will be agentic. So when it's not, I guess our panelists will kind of let us know. What I'd like to do is for each of you in turn to introduce yourselves. So Yemi, yours can be a quick one, I guess. But at the same time, just answer our opening question, which is really, how would you characterize and define agentic AI, agentic in particular, so that we know that we're all sort of talking about the same thing, and what impact do you think it's going to have? So, Yemi?
Cool, try and be quick. So Yemi, I'm Client Director for Media and Entertainment Portfolio at Softwire and Chief AI Strategist. For me, agentic AI is, it's a whole bunch of things. It's AI that's goal-driven, so it's kind of working towards a specific goal or sort of purpose or outcome. It's acting autonomously, independently, rather than just kind of, input and response. It's kind of engaging in a bit more of a multi-step workflow, I guess, so sort of, understand, think, act, learn, sort of in a bit of a cycle. But essentially it's kind of, I like to say, if AI is the brain, agentic AI is kind of giving the brain a body to move around in the world.
Okay, now that gets harder as you go down. So if it's just the same, just agree, but if you think it's something else, let us know. So Rhiannon.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rhiannon, or Rhi. I'm VP of Creative Strategy at Jellyfish and the product lead for Jellyfish Social Agents, one of our AI tools. I think you've done a great job of explaining technically what agents are, taking on complex tasks on behalf of humans. But I think as with all emerging technology, one of the most exciting ways to understand what it is to understand what it does for us. And for me, agents, talking to other agents, doing things on behalf of humans, the interesting part for me is what does that allow the human to do instead? So while the agents are doing this piece for you, they're booking your hotel tickets for you, they're deciding what your weekly shop should be, what does that leave you with space to do? And as a strategist, I think that's a really compelling question.
Okay, and what about the impact? How big do you think this will be in terms of change?
Oh, I mean, exponential.
Okay.
I think AI in itself has already been a huge landslide shift, but because of the autonomy of agents to do multi-step tasks, to do things with the degree of autonomy, I think that just opens up what they can do and the complexity of the tasks they're able to do, which makes them incredibly exciting.
Okay, thank you. Ed?
I'm Ed Greig. I'm the Chief Disruptor at Deloitte. So my job and my team's job is to work with new tech and look at how we can get it delivering real benefit as quickly as possible to our clients, to ourselves within Deloitte, and to wider society. I agree with what's been said. The more cynical view would be AI agents are what firms were marketing last year, but with a slightly different marketing spin on it, because that's the new buzzword. Because, we were at MWC recently, and one of my colleagues said that one of the tough things is you're having to kind of go through a layer of BS and my background's farming, so I recognize that when I see it, and you having to go through a layer of that in order to understand what is actually happening there. And I think that's a real challenge at the moment. And coming on to talk about transformation, I think that is a real challenge that firms are facing. And the other thing that people are saying as well is that's what APIs were for, in order to allow things to talk to each other. It was in the same way that an NFT was just a JPEG. Blockchain, a lot of the time you could just do it with a database. Like some of the agentic agent stuff you could just do with an API. And so I think that is, I think there are exciting opportunities, but I think it is really important to kind of focus on that goal and think about how you're going to solve it by focusing. Our motto is fall in love with the problem, not in love with the solution, and I think that is really key. So I don't want to be I'm not usually the cynical one, but just to be different to the first two.
Okay, Sarah.
Hi, definitely gets harder as you go down the line. I'm Sarah, so I lead platforms and innovation at Wavemaker globally. And I guess when I think about agentic AI, I guess in its most simplistic terms, I think about it kind of moving from reactive AI systems into more proactive AI systems. With limited supervision, right? I think right now there's a huge amount of primary supervision needed, and I think that's the shift we're seeing. In terms of the impact of media and marketing, I mean, it's huge. It's it's going to change everything. There's big numbers being pushed about. Salesforce, I think, came out and said that there's going to be 1 billion agents entering the workforce in the next year. Big numbers, and not just kind of on the workforce conversation. I think how it actually fundamentally changes marketing. The entire marketing funnel goes away if you start to think about agents. So I'm sure we'll get into that, but yeah, for me, it's huge and significant. Okay. Sorry, you have got the hardest stuff.
Definitely.
Don't worry. Well, I'm Sergio. I'm the head of brands and agencies in EMEA for Taboola. I look after partnerships with Big Six agencies and independent agencies across the region to make sure that the partnerships and the work we do together is better and stronger year on year. My definition of AI agents would be, I don't want to sound cheesy, but almost like digital companions for humans. These tools or these technology is connected to a number of data sources and information sources and can reason, analyze, and suggest or perform tasks to the extent that we ask them to do. Yeah. So I think eventually, in the personal and professional side of things, it's going to become like indispensable, like really important parts for each other. We're going to rely a lot on each other. They're going to rely on us on learning and understanding and how they can help us better and kind of customize the output that they give to us. Okay. In terms of what the impact is going to be in the marketing scene or media, I think it's going to be huge, mostly because it could reshape the media mix eventually. If and I think I can go extensive on this, but if media becomes more efficient, there's going to be open opportunities for other channels or other type of activations for marketeers and brands. So I think it's obviously like massive change in the society, in the way we work and the way we interact. Is like we're going to rely a lot on these things, and it's going to be. It's only early days of the technology. I thought about. I'm kind of a geek, and if you think about Jarvis and Iron Man or TARS and like Interstellar, these things in the movies, you actually feel emotions for them. You like them as characters, okay? And I think we are going to start experiencing this in the real world in no time. So yeah, that's kind of my view.
Right, thank you. Okay, so Ed, the media and entertainment and marketing industries have already gone through some pretty massive transformations from analog to digital, multi-channel to omni-channel. Are we actually ready for another massive transformation? Is it going to be easier this time?
Well, yeah. I think. I was thinking through that and like how many they've gone through, because and how many we've just gone through in my career. Because also, you had the switch from kind of desktop to mobile, and you also had the advent of social and social commerce. So, adaptability is obviously something that's really important. It's something that's very important in this industry. It does feel a bit tiring when you list all those out and you think, yay, another one. But in terms of whether it's easier this time, I think the point about this is that a lot of the things that have been necessary in order to execute those previous transformations well, around understanding your processes, clear purpose, clearly defined outcomes, data quality, is really the biggest one, and all of those things are true again, and so hopefully, if you've done some of those things previously, it's like when New Year comes around again and you're like, oh, I'm going to get healthy this time. Like if you did some of them some of those things last year. Maybe it's going to be easier this year to run that marathon or whatever. So I think that I think that is the thing that while there are differences this time, a lot of the kind of the fundamentals, and in some cases those fundamentals are kind of even more important. I think understanding process, being able to take a step back and really focus on the outcomes that you're trying to deliver rather than replicating that process, just replicating it task by task. I think that's really important. So again, it's not describing your process, it's understanding what your process is kind of there to deliver. I think those are all really important, and I think hopefully you've done a lot of those things, and this one's going to be a cinch, and you can just relax, because this will be the last one, so we're all done. So that will be great. But I mean, I think to Yemi's point from his talk as well, though, I do think that purpose piece and having those purpose protectors, that's really key as well. Because my big worry with the it'll free more time for people to do other stuff theory is that only works if leadership values those things, and if they value those kind of like higher order tasks. And the problem is, the evidence that we've seen so far is that is not always being valued by leadership, and they are thinking in terms of tasks and transactions. And so if an AI agent is doing the task instead of a human, that means that they're not thinking, wow, now how can we elevate that person's role? Some open-minded places are doing it, but the worry, and so when Yemi says go back and protect the purpose, I think that's what, maybe join your union, and then strongly advocate for that sort of stuff.
I'll just add really quickly. I mean, I think that's super interesting, and for me, I think that you will equally see the pendulum start to swing the other way. For the companies that don't do that, right? Because ultimately, what you're talking about of sort of reducing it down to a bunch of tasks in a workflow. Well, if you do that, I mean, let's take the ad industry, right? And you kind of optimize on sort of conversion metrics and whatnot. You're not focusing on the causality, right? The beginning bit of the process, which is how do you create the demand. So what I actually think, or the bit that I find super interesting about all of this AI, agentic AI sort of revolution, is that I think it's creating a space for people to become real leaders, right, in whatever sort of team, department, process, whatever thing that they do. That classic model of the operator, manager, leader sort of mode, and the people that step up to leader mode. So understand purpose, have clarity on the why that they're doing something, and have a clear vision of what the outcome is that they want to get. Those are the people that will win in this whole sort of thing. Mm-hmm. The people that just focus on over-optimizing on specific outputs, I mean, you're destined to fail, in my opinion.
Okay. Sergio, you've got an agentic AI tool called Abby, which is for digital media planning and buying. I mean, could you just tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. Well, we at Taboola are working very actively on the AI space and developing AI agents. So we have developed two technologies, or two agents. One for Taboola, for employees, to help us be more productive and more, less dependent on, human analysis and help us perform basic tasks more rapidly, and that's amazing. It's been released a couple of weeks ago. But when it comes to the client side of things and the demand side of things, Realize, which is the performance platform from Taboola, has an AI agent available called Abby. Okay, and the main differential thing of this is that we have trained that agent, and it keeps learning on how to set up campaigns automatically, only with a number of commands or prompts that you can give it. Okay, so say that you are a professional media planner and you know a lot about your job, you can give it very specific prompts and commands to the tool to build a campaign and put it to run. Okay, but say that you don't know anything about media planning, you can do similar things with the tool without having worked with it before. Okay, so you can say, I want to target women interested in running in North England, and I want to pay, CPA for selling suits. Okay, the machine, Abby, will create a campaign, will basically decide what to do with the targeting segments, with the geography of it, with the creative assets, building it for you, and put a campaign to run in about 2 minutes. Okay, and that's without any knowledge behind media planning. If you're a media planner, you can basically do a lot more sophisticated tasks, And Abby will be suggesting you things to improve the media planning, the part of the campaign, to make your life easier, consume less time, and actually suggest improvement to the campaign and optimizations. And if you ask the tool, it will eventually do the optimizations and perform the actions for you. So it will be saving hours every week to the average media plan. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of groundbreaking, because I've never seen anything similar, and this is actually really, really easy to use. It's like you can speak to the thing or input text commands, and it will do it for you. And yeah, it was released a couple of months ago. It's full released, and yeah, what we're hearing is really positive. It's life changing, and I think it's going to change the life of media planners around the world in no time when using it, because it's a big time saver and support. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's something else, to be honest.
Okay, and Sarah, you're also using agentic AI, obviously. So you've got the WPP Open platform, which is a sort of a marketing intelligence platform powered by AI. So can you just tell us about that? Because you've got particular agentic skills in there, haven't you?
So WPP Open is our AI-driven operating system, and it's our fastest adopted tool within AI. And it really was born out of, I guess, the scale and the frustration that marketers were seeing around starting to feel like contractors, having so many jobs to do and so many different jobs to do. This operating system essentially brings everything together. So within that operating system sits something called the AI brains. And those brains are specific systems that are designed around things like brand brain or performance brain or audience brain. And they're specific brains which really go deep into a brand's audience or a brand's performance. And they leverage both our clients' data and our data as well. And obviously, I'm sure many of you have read about the acquisition of InfoSum. And that's a huge part that plays into our operating system and our media ecosystem as well. So looking at a privacy-first approach to data, where we work with partners to have an ethical privacy ecosystem, where we can essentially anonymize data and drive interest data, behavior data, geography, context. So it's super exciting time for us. And yeah, as I say, WPP Open is scaling across everything from not just media, but into production and commerce. And I think, going back to kind of goal orientated, our goal in all of this was really to set very strong KPIs against all of those brains and deliver against them. So whether it's production and scaling of assets and content, whether it's efficiencies and things like our performance brain, better understanding of our audiences, building synthetic personas and focus groups. Yeah, it's huge, it's scaled, and it's a really exciting time.
And what is the impact that you've seen with these tools in terms of either efficiency or performance?
I think there's both an internal and an external gain. So for clients who are using our operating system, certainly huge productivity gains. We're seeing improvement on performance. We're seeing improvement on conversion. And then internally as well, I think the biggest thing has probably been the productivity gains. So every single team who is operating within WPP Open has seen a huge shift in how much productivity.
Okay, brilliant. All right, and Rhiannon, you've focused, one of your tools focuses on creative and social creative in particular. So that's Social Agent. I mean, tell us exactly what that does.
Yeah, so at Jellyfish, we have a number of AI tools in use with our clients. One of them you may have seen earlier with Jack's presentation, Share of Model, which tells you how large language models are interpreting and kind of surfacing your brand. And the other insight tool that we have is much more on the human gathering insight, which is Social Agents. I think inevitably in days like this, where we're talking about AI, you start to ask, what is the human of the humanness and the creativity that humans bring? And that is why this tool is so exciting for me, because as a strategist, you're always looking for those human idiosyncrasies and behaviors and little truths and nuggets that end up being a thread through to creative springboard. And one of the best places to find them is on social media. But often, to find those little idiosyncrasies, you have to spend a lot of time in the platforms, you have to read a lot of comments, you have to really get into the details. And so what Jellyfish Social Agents allows us to do is to analyze qualitative insights at speed and at scale. So the AI agents work by using the public APIs and essentially gathering reporting across Instagram, TikTok, channels on social media, and giving us a post-by-post report that allows us to see what are people saying, how are they creating content, what are the themes of that content, what is the audience asking for, what are their needs and desires, what is the design style. And so for our biggest clients, what we've been doing in pilots is looking at cultural sets of handles. So maybe we pull in a few competitors, a few creators who are at the forefront of that culture or subculture that they're interested in, maybe a few press outlets. And then what we would do is, on a week-by-week basis of the pilot, deliver a culture and trends report, which tells that client, okay, here is what the most interesting people in your space are creating this week. Here's the emerging trends, here's the design styles that you could jump off, and here's the white space for you. And that's the crucial piece, is what is the content optimization that we can do? And in fact, on one of our global pilots, in the very first meeting, one of the insights that we got was so powerful that within the hour, we'd updated content going out the next day to respond to that insight.
Okay, and share of model, which some people may have seen, but for anyone that didn't, this seems to be the brand is trying to influence the agentic agent, which may also be talking to another agentic agent. So it's kind of like share of voice, but share of agentic agent.
Yeah,
Potential,
so Jack talks about share of model as the most important audience that you'll never meet, or LLMs. So essentially, we're all starting to use chatbots now to have discussions, to ask, hey, can you recommend me some new running trainers? I have flat feet and I overpronate. The answer would be ASICs for anyone who also struggles with those. But as we see more and more brands implementing chatbots or kind of putting them in their own websites using agents, how your brand shows up in those conversations becomes increasingly important. And so share of model is all about allowing you to see which of the LLMs are currently talking about your brand, what are the perceptions, what are the parts of the brand that they're picking up on as being really positive, negative, and how does that appear across the web so that you can start to try and influence it. Because yes, as you said, we're going to get to a place where it's not necessarily humans going and searching for the hotel booking themselves. It might be an agent on behalf of them. It might be an agent on behalf of a human talking to another agent on a website. So we have to start thinking about the agents as their own audience, or AI at least as its own audience to consider talking to as a brand.
Okay, and Yemi, we're going to talk about humans in a minute, but before we do that, what is it that makes media and marketing particularly suitable for agentic? Or, I mean, is this a particularly good industry where agentic helps?
Yeah, I think it is, and probably for some of the reasons that people have alluded to earlier. I mean, I think for me, it's about complexity, scale, and speed, right? And you've got that in sort of the media sort of campaign and sort of ads, media planning and ad sort of planning sort of side of things. I think you've got, these kind of complex multi-step workflows. You've got very sort of specific goal-oriented sort of things going on there, right? Sort of conversion, brand uplift, etc. And you've got the sheer sort of scale, right, of which you want to do that, sort of multiple sort of audience segmentation, different sort of channels, etc. So I think for those reasons, it feels like it's ripe, for disruption. But I would still add, we've just got to be careful that we're not just focusing so much on the kind of the metrics and the conversion side of things and the actual human demand and that side of things.
Okay, and Ed, in terms of looking at it as a transformation, I mean, what would you say is best practice? I mean, you mentioned some of it at the start, but is there anything that we have to particularly focus on in the early days, and especially if you're a brand who maybe isn't very advanced with all the things that you might have done better in the first sort of digitization?
Well, I think Yemi's covered off quite a lot of the important things. I mean, as I say, fall in love with the problem, not in love with the solution. Can't stress that enough. That's been true, every single time, all throughout my career. And so I think you really don't ever be in the situation where it's like how are we going to use AI agents? It's a conversation. There's a back and forth element to it, but really, really understand the problem that you are trying to solve and the real problem that you're trying to solve before you rush into that. So I think that's absolutely vital from a transformation perspective. I think Yemi as well talked about having that vision. So we would also say, think big. So have that kind of clear vision of where you want your company to end up, agnostic of what tools you use to get there, but be very clear about where you want your company to end up, and then start small and test often. So as Yemi said as well, that's about training, that's about testing stuff and making sure that people are using these tools, and I think that's what Sergio and Sarah have described as well. And I think the think big as well, though, is I think what Sarah alluded to at the start was this is also, and I mean also it comes up in the changes that share of model kind of implies, is that you do have to be thinking big, both in terms of what you want to deliver, but you do also have to be thinking about where your audience is going, and be, as always, kind of relentlessly customer focused and user focused, and thinking about that. I do think, as Yemi has said a couple of times, like that there has been a move away from being audience focused to being metric focused, and that's obviously a big debate within the industry. But I think as well, as you've said, that potentially provides an opportunity for some people, and I think it could be a stumbling block for others who have gone too far down that metric optimization rabbit hole, and actually find that they've lost the actual real audience. Because I mean that problem is those clicks are getting less valuable because and views and clicks are getting less valuable as agents are crawling the web more and more, and so it's much harder to tell whether that actually represents something that will be good for you and for your brand and for your clients, or whether it will be or whether it's actually just noise. That was on they had the thing about cutting through the noise on that cool intro video. But that is the struggle at the moment. I see Cloudflare have got a new beta feature which you can turn on, which if it detects an AI bot, it will send it through an endless cycle of links just to basically put up the compute cost of whoever it is who's sending that out. So as Yemi's alluded to, there's real backlash, but also there's a lot of noise.
Okay, I just want to focus on what people are now doing in practice every day once the AI kicks in. So let's start with you, Sarah, and then we'll go to Sergio and Rhiannon. So where you've introduced your tools, people who were previously doing all that kind of stuff that's now automated, what are they now doing?
I mean, it depends on the job role. So I think, we're at the beginning, and I heard somebody the other day say, AI is at the very worst that it will ever be right now. And I think on that question, it's really interesting, because I think where people are exploring now and how job roles are changing now is going to change fundamentally in the future. We don't actually know what agents are going to be incredible at and what humans are going to be incredible at until we spend time with them. And I think, right now, there's two ends. There's the we like to talk about it as the empathy spectrum. You've got how you automate the task and how you augment the human. And I think, where we've really seen it show up is task-driven roles. And where we've started to really experiment and understand is where we can augment ourselves. What are the job roles like? The creative strategy, the consultancy piece. Those are the things that I think we're still in that experimentation mode with. And I think, we're in full flow with the task-driven activity.
Okay, and Sergio, where you've now got a media planning tool that's taken away some of the effort.
No, I think Sarah put it very well. I think these things are going to free up time for us from the analysis, and we're gonna be more focused on validating the output of the AI agents, and we're going to be able to spend more time with other humans, spending time on the important things like the strategy, the connection, learning, etc., etc. By now, it's like, if you think about the profile of the average media planner in London or Madrid or whatever, they're extremely busy individuals. They are setting up campaigns, optimizing, re-optimizing, learning. They don't have or hardly have any time to learn, to interact with the clients or vendors, to learn more about the industry, what solutions there are out there. Yeah? If we give them 10 hours more a week for that, the value is endless for the client, for the vendor, for the media planning himself, or herself. So I think it's going to free up time for the important things, which is spending more time with humans. And at the end of the day, the client is going to have more time because of the same reason. And I just want to believe it's going to enhance human interaction and make it more and stronger.
Just Rhiannon first, then I'll come to you. So, okay, so when, if people aren't now spending a lot of time themselves eking out those insights from social, what are they doing, those particular people?
Well, you said it beautifully earlier, Yemi, when you talked about people becoming leaders. Like, essentially, we're allowing people to create teams of agents for themselves. And although AI technology is incredible, a lot of the fundamental challenges that businesses were facing 10 years ago, they're still facing now. How do you organize your technology? What is your brand strategy? What audiences are you trying to target? And those fundamental questions don't disappear just because you have incredible technology. In fact, they become more important. The reason that prompt engineering became so big so early was because your output is only as good as your input. And so, the job of a strategist, in my case, maybe, or a creative director, is still to be the person who drives the vision that is then using the tools to create the thing. You still need to be an amazing creative director in order to see a vision through to the end. If you don't have those fundamentals, you can't create the thing. So becoming the leader with maybe your team of agents. But yeah, we've seen shifts internally we have an incredible cinematographer who's now he's an AI cinematographer. So those shifts are using the tool, but the vision is still, and the reason for being is still marketing fundamentals.
Okay, and you've spoken about leaders, and you also, Yemi, talked last week about parents.
I was just about that, so I was itching to sort of bring in that analogy, try and sort of piece a few things together. So, before I do that, I'm just going to pick up on the quote that Sarah said, right, which is that AI is the worst that it will ever be currently. And I think this kind of, let's say, helps bolster my somewhat imperfect analogy here. But I look at agentic AI or adopting agentic AI into your organization a bit like being a parent. Probably because I spend most of my life parenting these days. But this stuff really isn't that mature yet, right? But I think we constantly, because we've got that sort of hype as a service, right, that you see on your LinkedIn, you kind of think of it as this already really mature thing, and you're kind of fed this kind of, ream of sort of BS lines of it's totally going to transform your industry, and it's still very, very early days. So I like to think about it in terms of parenting, insofar as still sort of piecing other bits together. Right, so the AI has now got a body. It's like your kid, right? And your kid will learn these new skills. Your kid will learn to talk, it will learn to crawl, walk, etc. That doesn't mean you give your kid a skateboard or give it the keys to your car or whatever to all of a sudden go off driving. It's still a very immature sort of human being. And I think it's the same thing with agentic AI. And so what I think that means is that leaders is one way of looking at it, parents is another way, is that we are still in the process of parenting and sort of maturing these agents as the technology develops. And what that means is, as a parent, you want to be kind of checking on your kid and what your kid's doing. You want to make sure that you're giving your kid really explicit and clear instructions, right? If I tell my kids to go and clean her room, I can tell you now what she's probably going to do is she's going to grab a bunch of stuff and she's going to shove it under the bed. Now, technically, she's kind of cleaned her room, but she's not really done the thing that I asked her to do. So that clarity of vision, that clarity of instruction, of purpose and whatnot, I think is super important. But there's also like a whole bunch of governance and auditing that you want to do along the process of adopting agentic AI into your organization. In the same way that your child, I don't want to wait until the end of the year to find out that my child's completely flunked her year of school. I want to be having those right checks and balances along the way to see at every single juncture, what is she doing? Have I fed her the right sort of values in life in sort of the AI terms, I guess the right sort of bias sort of stuff, not bias, the right sort of data and whatnot. I think there are all of these rules, all of these roles that will continue to develop as we watch agentic AI continue to mature and to mature and to mature. We just need to remember that as Sarah said, it's the worst that it will ever be. And there is still a massive long journey that it's going on that I think still then requires us as the humans to be able to look after that journey as it develops.
Great. Okay. Now
I mean, it might come up in the question.
You're gonna ruin my analogy.
I'm not gonna completely ruin it. The only thing about the word worst is that is quite there's a broad category of things that can apply to, because when we first had cars, they didn't have lead in the petrol, and then we put lead in the petrol, which in theory was making it better, and it actually killed a whole load of people. Mm-hmm. So and now you've got these cars in the US that, because of some weird stuff around tax law, that have the same viewing angle as an M1 tank. So again, killing people. So it doesn't necessarily follow that stuff will always get better. And it's weird me playing this role, but I'm just here to play devil's advocate. But it doesn't necessarily follow unless we have a very clear vision for what good looks like. There is a real danger we sleepwalk into something that seems better. And I mean, social media is the other example. MySpace was great, wasn't it? Who just loved Tom? And then we've got this. And so, just bring back MySpace. So there isn't, and so I just think you have to be really careful. And also sometimes it happens with parenting as well. You're like, bring back the little kid that was just lying there rather than this one that's on the floor of the supermarket chucking stuff. Did it get better, or is this because I remember when it was lying in bed asleep and was really cute, and then now it's there this. Well, yeah, at that moment I think it really is, isn't it? But so I think we have to be really careful about that, because that sort of positive progress is not inevitable. That's why that vision is really important.
Yeah.
So I think it's potentially but even technically stuff. There's actually a really good Cory Doctorow article about enshittification, which is really, if you haven't read it, go and read it. Which is why services get shitter, and that one is really worth reading. Because so again, even technically, while the technology might have the potential to be better, the stuff that we're actually, the actual public-facing product that we're getting may have been made worse in order to save on compute costs. So I think we just have to be a bit careful on that, but so that we avoid the AI equivalent of the 2-year-old throwing crisps on the floor.
Right, and I'm really sorry, I haven't got time for audience questions, but I've just got one last one, and anyone can answer it if you want to. You don't have to answer it. But if we become much more efficient at AI, or much more efficient at media and marketing because of AI, what happens with the money if we manage to do the same for less? Do we reinvest it in media? Do we move it into CRM or somewhere else? I mean, just anyone who wants to contribute to that.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if this is a prediction or a wish, but I want to believe those media dollars will go into more experiential marketing, perhaps better products, perhaps a reduction of the cost of the products. So basically, if the marketing of the media becomes more efficient, it is reinvested in places where brands can connect with people more closely in a more personal way, and then online media perhaps becomes more transactional, more performance-driven to buy the final product. But I don't know if that's a prediction or a wish from myself.
Okay, Sarah, do you want to?
I'd go the same. I'd go experience. I'd go vibe marketing. Building more things, putting more prototypes out there. More entrepreneurship and marketing. I'd go the same.
Ed?
I hope all those things happen.
Okay.
You're the Debbie Downer today.
No, I'm not usually like that. But I mean, it definitely feels more like a wish than just based on the evidence. I would love those things to happen. Is what I will say.
All right, Rhiannon.
Yeah, I think definitely more into media. I think AI will change how content is created on the internet, and that will change the creator economy and the types of content there, and it will change how valuable human creators become in specific subcultures, and I think that will shift some dollars over there. And then it will also have an impact because of online culture being impacted by AI, not just as content, but as an audience. It will also maybe see our offline communities change, and therefore we may want to throw dollars over there, like you said, experiential, etc. So, yeah.
Okay, Yemi, finish off 20 seconds.
I'm just going to say the same as the others. I think the experiential stuff, I think the offline stuff as well. I think you'll see the pendulum swing back and people will start to crave that potentially less digital stuff. So, yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Well, sorry I didn't get audience questions in, but I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much, and thanks to the panelists.
Thank you.